With the first pick.
Alrighty, welcome to On the Clock. On the Clock's presented by our friends at Titan Bat Company. If you're looking for the highest quality handcrafted wood bats in the game, Titan Bats has you covered with premium maple, ash, and birch game bats in 10 different models and colors to fit your swing and style. As you're gearing up for the spring season, Titan Bats is the perfect option for your next wood bat. In addition to game bats ranging from youth baseball to softball to men's baseball, Titan Bats also offers award bats that make the perfect gift to celebrate a teammate, coach, or baseball fan in your life. Check them out at titanbats.com and use the code JB15 for 15% off your order. All right, it is Monday, April 21st. This is On the Clock, your Just Baseball, College, and MLB Draft podcast. We're going to go through the top 25 update. It's been absolute chaos and mayhem, but we're able to put together a top 25. I'm Jared. We got Tyler Jennings with us. We got Will Mosa joining us. Guys, what are your consensus here of the top 25 right now?
Chaotic, probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, we had a number 7 from our last update drop out of the top 25 completely in Wake Forest. But let's start with the number 1 overall team here. The Texas Longhorns are the new number 1. Arkansas loses the series to who did they? I can't remember who they lost to this weekend. I should remember this, but
A&M, I think.
Oh yeah, A&M. Yep. So Longhorns are the new number 1. They come away with a massive series win. Will, what do you got on this Texas team?
Yeah, I think we have to start acknowledging Max Weiner as the premier pitching coach in the entire country to do what he did at A&M last year and then carry it right over to Texas in year 1 over there. Jared Spencer has been spectacular for them so far. And then kind of the new guy to the rotation over the last 4 or 5 weeks has been Ruger Rojas on Sundays. Yeah. And he's been just about as good as you can get on Sundays, especially in the SEC. He's got 48 strikeouts and 48 innings and change. Just a really, really good arm. And this is a team that just seems to pump out dudes out of the bullpen. It doesn't really matter what's happening in the game. They have a guy for every situation. And I think that's just a testament for what Weiner has done as a pitching coach at Texas this year, but also what he did at A&M last year, because it seems to just be the same thing as last year with an entirely new roster.
Yeah, and you mentioned kind of Ruger joining the rotation. It's like they lose Jared Spencer, right, to injury and went Friday night, I think. And that guy's been just the lights out. We saw him at the Shriners College Showdown. Absolutely electric. He solidified him as kind of the ace of this staff. And to lose a guy like that, I think it's going to be huge for them. But I feel like this is the team that we kind of talked about it on the last podcast that's just built on depth, right? Like top to bottom. They have the pieces to, when these injuries come up, to kind of fill the void. Like Ethan Mendoza was down with an injury, Max Bellew was down with an injury, and like they still keep finding ways to win baseball games. So it's kind of insane to see the depth of this team and just what they've been able to put together. Tyler, what are some of your thoughts here on Texas?
I think you summed it up pretty well, where this team is just top to bottom, probably has the most depth of any team in the country. To bring up another guy in that bullpen that I honestly do think can make a jump to that rotation now if Spencer misses a significant amount of time, Dylan Volantis, the freshman back there, I think he's got like a 1.1 or maybe even slightly below that ERA. He's got 46 strikeouts and 34 innings. And this is a true freshman from SoCal that has essentially been a stalwart in the back of the bullpen that they really love. So to have that kind of freshman arm to really, now get bigger innings going into later on into the season, I think he's going to be a very vital piece for them. But you also mentioned the lineup, like Bellew's going to be out the rest of the year. Will Gasparino has turned into a significant part of this lineup. Mm-hmm. And, I really do think that this Texas squad, as much as, we mentioned this is a team that is completely different from what it was a year ago, I think this might end up being the most complete team in the entire country now.
Yeah, and you talk about freshmen, and they've had Adrian Rodriguez doing incredible things for them as a freshman. But then they have Jonah Williams, the guy who all went to Texas for both football and baseball, gets his first 2 starts. He goes 5 for 9 with 3 runs scored, 3 RBIs. It's just like this guy hasn't started all year long, and then he gets his first 2 starts of the year and just absolutely rakes. So it's like they have guys that are just going to keep kind of piling on. It's kind of insane.
Did I also forget to mention this, but he's also been up to 95 from the left side on the mound. So, like, just to put that out there, he hasn't pitched yet, but he was on he classified or he reclassed early. He graduated early to get to campus, and I know during the fall he had some heat on him as an arm. So it's a really, really talented profile, and he's also a 5-star safety, if I'm not mistaken. So he's going to be a very interesting case to watch over the next few years, especially with how they handle him with both football and baseball, because Steve Sarkisian is no slouch when it comes to coaching on the football side. So I'm very interested to see what happens.
I love it. We want to talk about the teams that are in and the teams that are out. So let's start with the teams that are in. So we got West Virginia coming in at number 12 on our ranking now. Texas A&M coming in at number 17, and then Coastal Carolina coming in at number 20. So stay in the state of Texas. Let's talk about the Texas A&M Aggies. And Will, I want to talk to you about this first, because I know you just did an article on if Texas A&M can still win a national championship. So what are your thoughts on the Aggies? Are they back?
Yeah, 100%. And basically my whole outline of my article was here's kind of the path they have. And with the remaining schedule, how good it is, 4 teams within the top 25, 4 teams within the top 10, actually, and then Mizzou thrown in there. So I was more so looking at it. Can they get the series against LSU? Can they steal one of the series against Arkansas or Georgia at the end of the season? And of course, they did it this weekend and made my life a little bit easier when I'm kind of predicting these kinds of things. And hopefully they continue to take care of business, because they truly are playing like the team that we thought they would be in December and came out of the gate so slow. And we gave them so much leeway and said, oh, it's not time to hit the panic button yet. And then just when you think they're out, they turn it all around against Tennessee with a sweep. And now they're just on this hot streak. And they really dominated against Arkansas this weekend. I know they looked a little bit shaky against a subpar South Carolina team last week, but they looked like an entirely new group this weekend and just seem to be getting better every single day that goes by. So if you're an A&M fan, there's still a ton of hope. I think the way things might shake out, we actually might get them in an Austin regional. I think that would be electric, and we're going to get a preview to that because they're about to play Texas in Austin. So we might be getting a precursor to a regional matchup in just a week here.
Yeah, and I kind of talked about this in the group chat. I'm so excited Texas A&M got hot right before this Texas series, because it's just going to make it electric. The reason for me, like you kind of, and I think you hit on it, Will, that they've really started to take off is because of the offense, right? Like Caden Sorrell's back. He's absolutely raking. And then LaViolette this weekend slash 417, 533 with a 14-17 slug, 4 home runs, 7 RBIs, 8 runs scored. Like having the guy that's been supposed to be leading this offense start to heat up, actually show up. He's got 15 home runs on the year now, broke the Texas A&M program record. Tyler, I know because this is kind of related to the draft. He's been one of the top prospects for the 2025 draft. What have you kind of seen change with Jace over the last few weeks?
I think the biggest thing has been seeing more adjustability to his swing, because we had mentioned before, like, he wasn't really using his lower half. It felt stiff. There was some issues with spin early on in the year that we didn't see last year. So kind of looking at that now, just looking over the past couple of weeks, actually, I think he's dropped his overall whiff rate down to 25% on the year. But just looking ever since that Kentucky series, if I can bring up the stats here, actually. Un momento, por favor. We're doing this on the fly, by the way.
Stay for long, awkward pauses. That's why you come to this podcast.
Exactly. But I think the biggest thing, too, when you look at what Jace has done with the fastball over the past couple weeks, he's not chasing the fastball. He's crushing the fastball. And I think that's the biggest thing to take away is, like, I think he's finally got his timing down on the fastball to make him better. When we talk about that, like, I'm going to bring up an example. AJ Gracia from Duke, tough start to the year, but I was talking to Brian Sikowski, the Duke coach over there, and he had mentioned the timing on the fastball just wasn't there for him. And I think that's a similar case with Jace, where wasn't quite timed up with the fastball and kind of was guessing a little bit, but now he's more solidified in getting his timing down, and there is more fluidity and more not athleticism, but like it's not as locked up as what it was, 2 months ago. So I think he's done a good job of finding his stride here and at the right time too, because there's still some question marks on how if this streakiness continues to the next level, how does that affect his stock? But I think right now, if he keeps his pace up the rest of the year, I think he's back in the top 10 conversations with the kind of tool set that he has.
Yeah. And it's kind of cool to just to see how all these guys are stayed gelled together, right? You can kind of tell they want to be playing for Coach Early. And there's questions like people were putting Early on the hot seat, right? They started 1-9 in SEC play, ended up turning it out. Now they're 8-10 in SEC play. Like, it's got to feel good for the team and for Early to just like have this kind of, not necessarily security, but to like be on this streak and maybe make a run in the playoffs.
Yeah, it was so interesting too because he's their hitting guy, and so for the weak point of this team for that long to be the offense, I think was just so confusing to fans that it was like whatever he was doing, it's not working anymore. So I wonder if it was just a little bit of shock value there that the offense that you came to love last year with the same coach seemed to be the issue with the team because of how good that pitching staff was. And I think the biggest thing for me with this team is how good the role players have been. Like you mentioned, like, yes, Jace LaViolette is heating up and Caden Sorrell being back is the spark they needed, but guys like Blake Binderup have been hitting really well the last couple of weeks, and Bear Harrison has found a way to contribute, and he's got 8 home runs on the year now. So they have these guys, and it's not just let's put all of the weight of Aggieland on Jace LaViolette and see what happens. Now they're kind of going 9 deep as a lineup, and that's pretty scary for anybody who's unfortunate enough to host them come June if they do find a way in.
Especially if they're like a 2-3 seed and you're like the 1 seed of that, you're just like, this isn't gonna be. And the rotation's already good, so it's just like then you run into a monster. It's just crazy because their RPI went from 114 to 38 to as, and I guess if one way if you're gonna get your way back into the top 25, you might as well just win like back-to-back series against number 1 teams that were consensus number 1s going into both those weekends. So gotta love it. Switching over now to the other team that's the highest ranked that we had West Virginia Mountaineers coming in at number 14. This is a team that's 34-4 overall, 13-3 in the Big 12. We kind of talked about it before we even started recording that this is a team that, they have an RPI that's, I think they're 14th in RPI right now, but the strength of schedule is not very strong. The Big 12 just hasn't looked very good this year. Tyler, I think you saw West Virginia this fall, right?
Can confirm.
Yeah. Is there things that you're seeing in this team that you really like?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, kind of looking at the lineup, like Sam White was a guy that kind of impressed me in the fall. He put up good at-bats against pretty good pitching from Wake, and that was even with some guys that were on the shelf because of illness. But I think he's hitting like 380 right now with not a ton of power, but he's not striking out. He's getting on base. I think it's 9 doubles, 3 home runs right now. I think he's really the big piece of this lineup. Then you look at like Skylar King, Logan Salve being a big part of that as well. But then also on the pitching side, I think the pitching side's been pretty impressive for what they've had. Like, trying to think, I think the big part of that is Chase Meyer, who I think he's got like a 2.5 ERA, and he's also got a 44 strikeouts in 29 innings. He's probably the biggest piece of this West Virginia pitching staff, and that's also to include like David Hagen, who has a 2.2 ERA, Robbie Porco, who has gotten some significant innings for them, and I think it's Jack Kartsonis is his name. I could be mistaken on the pronunciation, but another guy that's got a low ERA and is also striking guys out at a pretty solid clip. So, this is a underrated staff, I think, and we talked about it before, where the Big 12 is just so weird right now.
Yeah.
But even with the strength of schedule not being as high as you'd want to see for a team, being 34-4 is still a very high mark to get to this point.
Yeah, I agree. And Will, do you have any thoughts? I know you're pretty high on West Virginia too.
Yeah, they're just a really interesting case because of that strength of schedule. So I was able to sit down and I watched every inning of that Arizona series because it was probably one of the best series on. It's probably one of the better series that has happened in the Big 12 to this point in the season. And it was just one of those weird series. Like game 1 goes 16 innings. It was kind of gross. Both teams struck out a total of 50 plus times. Just not a good baseball game, but also a very good baseball game, if that makes sense. And then game 2, the Mountaineers come out after losing in 16 and they thump the Wildcats. And then game 3 was really close for 6 or 7 innings until Arizona finally blew it open. And to me, that's like the one really quality opponent they do have this season. And I thought they held their own for the majority of that series. So to me, this is a team that is really solid. Are they a top 15 team in the country? I'm not really sure yet, just because I don't have enough of a like quality sample size to go off of because of how weird the Big 12 has been. To your point, Cincinnati is not very good. Houston's not very good. They play Penn State in a midweek this week, which I guess is a decent test, but Penn State's midweek pitching has kind of been a roller coaster. So so I don't even know if that is a good test. I actually think getting UCF at UCF will be a good test for them. That's been a tough place to go. It's a really old and experienced team that can catch teams in Orlando. So I think that'll actually be a good test. That's probably the best series they play the rest of the way, other than Kansas the last weekend of the season, who has been a fantastic story to this point. They can hit the cover off the baseball. So that might be a really high scoring, fun series to watch. But I think they're going to be a solid team. I mean, I don't know if you can't deny the record. If they continue to win on this trajectory, they're going to get a host seed. I don't know that they'll be a national seed, but they'll probably host it, I have to imagine, unless the wheels really fall off this thing.
Yeah. I will say, as someone who has seen Penn State in a midweek versus Georgetown, and Georgetown put up 14 runs against Penn State's midweek arms, it's not anything to write home about. It's a lot of guys who throw hard, but you just don't know where the baseball is going. So, but I agree with you on West Virginia. I think the other thing I really like about this team too is just it's a lot of veteran leadership, right? I think 7 of their guys are returning from that super regional team. So like this is a team that's experienced, has been there before, has like gone through the entire conference tournament play, has won it out and gotten to the NCAA tournament and made it to a super. So if that's a team like that has a chip on their shoulder, like really wants to get to that next level, get to Omaha, like this is the team, I think. Moving on to the last team that we have that's entering the top 25, Coastal Carolina. I think this is a team for us that's been on the bubble of the top 25, and like every single update, at least somebody has voted for Coastal to be in the top 25. They are 30-10 overall this year. They got a 14-4 mark in the Sun Belt Conference. Really been winning games at home. They're 17-3 at home. So they've claimed victory in 5 of their 6 conference series. So this team's on a roll. They have a first-year head coach, I believe, right? And Kevin Chenal. Tyler, this is a team from your region. What are some of your thoughts on Coastal?
I think looking at what they have, like this isn't a team that's like gonna beat the cover off the baseball. Like, I think the highest home run total they have is 8 from Blake Barthol, but he's not hitting for average right now. And then you look at what Bodine brings, like obviously the fantastic hit tool, but he hasn't hit for power this year like we all thought he was going to. However, I think the pitching staff is much improved. Jacob Morrison's probably the biggest piece of that rotation, and I know I mentioned big, like I think he's like 6'8", 240. Cam Flukey's turned the corner in his sophomore year. I think he's got like a 3.2 ERA to this point. And some of the pieces they've gotten from other places, like Colin McKay comes in from Virginia, I do believe. And granted, he's not gotten a ton of playing time, but he's done a serviceable job in the role he's had. Dominic Carbone's another guy, Luke Jones, Riley Eichhoff, who's been there for what feels like ages at this point, doesn't walk anybody. So, there's a lot of pieces in this pitching staff that have really performed well to this point. And I think that's really the biggest thing that has kind of kept them in check and kept them in ball games is just the pitching staff in that ballpark. And it's a pretty hitters friendly ballpark for what it's worth.
Yeah. Well, I know you're like me and have love for the mid-majors. What are your thoughts on Coastal?
I do. This is a team that's really interesting to me because they've always historically been a team that hits really well, and the pitching seems to just come up short. We saw it last year with them. That lineup mashed top to bottom, and the pitching just gave up so many runs every single weekend and couldn't really keep them in games. And this year it's kind of flipped, right? There's not as much power production in it. You do have Blake Barthol, who was one of my favorite mid-major guys coming into the year, and he's been kind of disappointing, especially in the average category at the plate. They still have Caden Bodine, who's one of the better pure hitters in all of the drafts. He's one of my favorite catchers in the 2025 draft class. Like you said, Tyler, Cameron Fluke has really turned a corner in terms of control and being able to command the strike zone. He's a guy that's going to end up throwing high 90s at some point. He's got a huge frame. And Riley Eichhoff, he doesn't strike anybody out, but he's in the zone so much. And that's been the thing of this Coastal pitching staff is their ability to throw strikes this entire season has been so good. It's tough, right? When you're facing pitchers that are in the zone 70 to 80. I think there was a game a couple weeks ago and their pitching staff was like 80% in the zone on 2 of the 3 games. Like that is impossible to score runs on when you're in the zone that much with any sort of decent stuff, right? It doesn't have to be Jacob deGrom level stuff. You can have average stuff and you can get away with so much when you're in the zone that often. So Coastal has been a team that I was kind of out on coming into the year with, and yeah, Kevin Schnall was in the program last year, so it's not like we're really changing leadership. He was around for a long time, but when you leave and lose a coach that was around for as long as he was before him taking over, you kind of expect that back step a little bit. And even though they do bring a lot back, they're finally hitting their stride after looking a little bit rough to start the season. I kind of thought it was going to be same song and story, but not as much talent. But they've really turned the corner and they've been really good. And the Sun Belt just got a lot more interesting because there's some really good teams at the top of that conference right now.
Yeah, and like to your point, like stepping back when a new coach takes over, like Maryland, I think is a good example of that, right? Like Rob Vaughn left, and you have Coach Swope, who's been with the program for years, played at Maryland, has been an assistant. They're just struggling to find it back and find it back to their winning way. So you never know what was going to happen. Like Coastals look really good. The one guy I wish that they had, I know he got injured early in the year, was like Cullen McKay. Like that rotation still had him, the Virginia transfer. Like I was excited to watch him all year long, and just I guess imagine like what that team would be if they had him as well. It'd be crazy.
I'll be honest, I didn't realize he was out.
Yeah. Yeah, he got hurt in like what, late February, early March, something like that.
Yeah, he only threw like
Wow.
15 innings this year. I don't even think he got across 20.
Yeah, and I think he was going to get a second opinion or something when I read the injury article earlier this year. So I don't know what the status update is on that, but man, that would have been a fun rotation if he was just staying healthy and still there. Now we got to go for the teams that are out. We're going to save Wake Forest for last because I think that's going to be a long discussion for all of us. Tyler just went and saw them on live looks this weekend too, so we can kind of loop that in there. The first team that's out for us is Kansas Jayhawks. This is a team that I could probably see making their way back into the top 25, but they've just kind of recently struggled. They got swept by TCU, and I think that was kind of the pivotal series that really kind of got them bounced. They did come back and bounce back and sweep K-State, but that's just not a strong enough team, I think, to get them sticking in the top 25. Will, what are some of your thoughts on this Jayhawks team?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that sums it up really well, right? TCU to me was their prove it weekend.
Yeah.
And they were mostly non-competitive the entire weekend. That Saturday game was a good game, but other than that, TCU kind of took it to them. I know Fort Worth is not an easy place to go. And then you play K-State, who I know was getting a lot of love like 2 weeks ago just because of the record, but having eyes on them, they remind me very much so of Oklahoma State, but with a little bit less talent on the offensive side of the ball, where they've got like 2 good arms that if you catch them on the wrong day, you're probably not going to win. Like what we saw them do to Arkansas really early in the year in one of those first tournaments. It's a good series win, right? I mean, it's a rivalry series. You always love to sweep your rival. It's impressive no matter which way you cut it because those can go any which way. But it's not a team that with their schedule I've been overly high on. Even the Arizona State, like you lose the series to Arizona State, who is really hot and cold. Like I can't get a read on that team for the life of me. And you struggle with some lesser Big Ten teams like Minnesota. I know you beat them 1,000-0 in one of the games, but you lost the other one. You struggled with UW Milwaukee in one game. So they've just been a weird team to me. I think they're a fantastic story. The coaching there is really taking a turn, and I believe this is his 4th year there. So, that program is certainly trending in the right direction. I think we're just a little bit too early on the Kansas hype train, but it's definitely a good one to continue to keep track of. And they'll probably be in the national tournament this year for what it's worth.
Yeah, I think they're definitely a playoff team. I think they'll get in some way. Tyler, I know you have some thoughts on some of the offensive players here for Kansas, because I think, like we were talking about before the recording, like some of the strengths for this Kansas team is definitely on the offensive side.
Yeah, and I think the biggest part of that is Brady Ballinger. He was eligible next year. He's a JUCO transfer from Southern Nevada, which people recognize the name. Bryce Harper's JUCO back in 2010. But there's another guy in this lineup that has really impressed me a little bit, and I think it's Jackson Hague. I could be mispronouncing his name. Let me see if I can find the pronunciation here.
Is it Hague, maybe?
It might be Hague, but he's a grad student from Minnesota, I believe. And if I remember correctly, he's either tied for the Big 12 home run lead with 17, or he's amongst the leader, or like he is the outright leader.
He's got
Like
some
those.
bonker stats.
Yeah, it's like 337 average, 17 home runs, and he's walking a pretty decent clip too. So like, I think him and Ballinger, and I think Ballinger has 13 home runs as well. Those are the two big pieces of that lineup that really do impress me. And like, I think to your point about the pitching staff, like it can be hot and cold. Like Don Vagley pitched 8 stellar innings against Oklahoma State less than a month ago, and then I think against TCU, like you mentioned, that was probably their biggest series to this point. I think he gave it like 10 runs in 4 innings or something and got shelled. So it's a very interesting team. I do agree with Will, where I think we are a little bit too early to get on the hype train for them, but this is a fantastic story for a team that, a couple of years ago didn't really have much to show in their program. So it's been quite a turnaround over the past 5 years for this program.
Yeah, and I think this program would probably be a little bit better if they had a 2 and 3 guy who are really kind of solidified, right? I think Dominic Vogel's now up to 6.05 ERA. He was kind of their ace last year. And then they really haven't solidified that last spot in the rotation. So, I mean, Cannon Carr has been pitching pretty well. I think Manning West is getting some starts here and there, but it's hard if you don't have the pitching staff, no matter how much thump you might have in that lineup. So our last team second to last team that's out, Virginia Tech Hokies. This is a team that just jumped into our top 25. They swept what we had as a highly ranked Wake Forest team at the time, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. But they took 2 or 3 at Notre Dame. They took a series from a ranked Louisville team. So like those factors led them kind of getting into that top 25. They then get swept by Florida State. They lose the series to North Carolina. And yeah, those are 2 pretty good teams, right? And so, but they've also kind of just struggled most of the year. And I think a lot of that's due to some of the injuries they've had. Like first baseman Garrett Michelle went down with a leg injury, and they've just had a couple other guys that were productive for them kind of just drop out. So they're 25 and 15 overall. It's not bad. It's solid. They're 10-11 in ACC play. Tyler, do you have some thoughts on Virginia Tech?
It's a solid team with good leadership. Like Sam Tackett's really turned it on this year I think he's a senior. But to your point on the injuries, like you mentioned, Garrett Michelle potentially out for the year with that Achilles injury, and I think it was like a home run celebration.
Yeah.
And they're missing some talent on the mound too. Like Madden Clement's not pitched since the opening weekend because he went down with an injury, and he was one of their prize sophomores with Brent Renfro. And then also Andrew Sentlinger, who was really their big lefty out of the bullpen with an electric fastball, has been out since the Wake Forest series. So I think for what they are, it's a well-rounded offensive team. Like Jared Davis, David McCann, those are two guys that really kind of come up to my mind as like they're productive for what they are. And Anderson French as well. It's another kid, like a freshman that can man first base and can catch, has been productive as well. But the pitching side has been through quite a few injuries. And I think like right now they're having to throw some freshmen into the fire kind of in that rotation. Like I think Jake Marciano is their Saturday guy now behind Renfro. And it's definitely a valuable experience to have for them. And I think as they get older, there'll be a better program on the pitching side for me, because I think, in my opinion, like Virginia Tech has done a good job with developing over the past few years.
Yeah.
But as of right now, it's just the injuries have been piling up, and it's really tough to be consistent when you lose quality guys like that. So I'm hoping at some point we'll get news on like Clement, Stettlinger, because I think they've been pretty mute on those so far, but they come back towards the end of this campaign here and, give Virginia Tech some solidification in the pitching staff. I think this could be a team that makes some noise in Durham at the ACC tournament.
Yeah, and I agree. I like this team. I think they're fairly good in terms of like having veteran leadership and things like that. I just looking at their schedule the rest of the year in terms of making noise. Like they have Duke, they got Pitt, and they got Virginia. Like that's a pretty decent schedule where you can kind of turn things around. Like if they have the ability to sweep Wake, they had, I believe they played North Carolina pretty tough. They were in all of those games in that series. Like if if you're looking at the end of ACC play, I mean, Duke's going to be pretty tough. They've started to get pretty red hot as well. But like, if you have Pitt and Virginia, I mean, like that's a chance to turn it around. Will, do you think this team can turn it around too?
Yeah, to me, this team perfectly sums up what the ACC is this season, where I really believe it is completely wide open, and Clemson is just one of those teams that doesn't lose regardless of what their stats look like on paper. But the ACC to me feels completely wide open. I mean, this is a team that won a series against Louisville, who was red hot at that point and has been in and out of the top 25. And then the following weekend, you go to Wake Forest and sweep them. And then you beat Troy in a midweek, who has been flirting with the top 25 and a really, really good Sun Belt team. And then you get handled by Florida State, and then you drop another series to UNC. Like this team, it's so ACC. The ACC is so chaotic this season. There's so many teams that are just in the middle of the pack. And I wouldn't be surprised if a team like Virginia Tech ends up winning the tournament for an auto bid. I really wouldn't be. I think there are 9 or 10 teams in this conference that can come out and surprise a lot of people when we get to the ACC tournament. And I mean, they're set up for it. They have a lot of veteran leadership. Like you said, Sam Tackett is awesome. Henry Cook is putting together a solid year. I really like Brett Renfro. I loved him last year as a freshman, and he's taken some huge strides this year. I think he's just going to continue to get better. Yeah, the injury stuff is definitely going to hurt them, but I mean, this feels like the kind of team that when we get into tournament play, when you're looking at, this is like the 6th seed that you don't want to see. Like if you run into this team, you're like, oh shoot, like we got Virginia Tech here in round 2. Like we're going to have to watch out. So I definitely think that there is some turnaround potential in there, especially with the remaining schedule. It's not too difficult to where you're just going to stumble, but good enough to where you can get your feet back under you, get some quality wins in, and then get into the tournament and hope things are trending in the right direction at that point.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that sometimes people kind of forget about. Like the rankings are the rankings, right? But once you get into conference tournament play, like anything can happen. I remember when I was working at Nevada, like you knew like once conference play, you could be the 1 seed all year long if you wanted to be. But Nevada went, I think the year that I was there, like won 45 games and they went 0-2 in the conference tournament, didn't make the NCAA tourney. So like things like that can happen. So I mean, you got to be prepared for those kind of things. Sticking with the ACC, got to talk about Wake Forest. Everybody's probably like, how did you have a number 7 seed all of a sudden drop out of the top 25? This team has been very hot and cold. I think we probably can all say that we had them ranked probably too high in the last update. Just going through their schedule here at the start of ACC play, they swept Notre Dame, which is, fine. Probably a pretty easy team to sweep. Swept Miami. They played Clemson pretty tough. They took one in that series. Probably should have won that Sunday game as well. Then they go and get swept by Virginia Tech. Then they lose. Then they go to Florida State, win a series down in Florida State, and then they get swept by North Carolina. And then they come and they hosted Boston College this weekend, which Tyler was at, and we'll talk a little bit more on that. Win the first game, and you're like, all right, this should be like easy sweep for Wake Forest. No, they lose 7-2 on Friday, lose 5-7 or 7-5 on Saturday. Tyler, what did you see in this Wake Forest team? What is this team real? Is this team just done? What do we got?
I think bipolar is probably the best way to put it.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to make this to where like I don't have Coach Muscar up my up my butt tomorrow, but I think even he could agree. Like, there's some stuff to really work on with this team. I think defensively, there's been some mistakes that could be cleaned up, and the pitching staff's pretty young. Like Thursday was, like Chris Lavonis pitched the first few innings, and you take in Hayden LaFew, and those are 2 of your youngest arms on the team, and they perform well. But then you get to Friday and Saturday, and like Blake Morningstar's a Saturday guy, and has been pretty darn good for that squad. I think he's been their most consistent starter on the year. He didn't have the greatest outing, and the offense has been kind of hot and cold recently. Like you mentioned, them going to Florida State and just annihilating them. But then also UNC run ruled them twice, and then I think won a 3-2 game on the Sunday. So it's very interesting. Obviously, they don't have Ethan Conrad for the rest of the year with the shoulder injury that he had. And I think they're working on some things at the top lineup because it's been Cam Nelson, Merrick Houston are the big 2 guys at the top. Cade Lewis follows them. But I think at the bottom of that lineup, there's just not been consistency from like Matt Scannell, Jimmy Keenan, who we thought was probably going to be one of their biggest pieces this year coming in from St. John's. So Do I think this is a team that can make a bit of a rebound before ACC tournament play? I think so. We'll just have to see, what happens over the coming weeks. But just the best way to describe them so far has been bipolar, to say the least.
Yeah, and it's to me too. It's like they're kind of missing that big superstar that they've always had, right? Like they had Chase Burns, they had Nick Kurtz, they had Brock Wilken. Like they had these big guys. Like you could say, like argue probably Merrick Houston could potentially be that, but Merrick Houston's not the same type of bat having like a Nick Kurtz or a Brock Wilken in your lineup. Like it's not supplying the same run production, power, those kind of things. I think they're kind of missing that. And like you don't have a Rhett Lauder or a Chase Burns in that rotation, which they've had in the past. And they even had like a Teddy McGraw back in the day before he got injured. I just feel like this team overall is just kind of missing that big star power.
Yeah, and I think that Ethan Conrad injury is going to hurt them quite a bit. In like not even just ACC play, but even like say we tournament time and they're like a 2 or 3 seed somewhere. Not having that kind of bat in your lineup is going to sting because he was really hot going into the injury. It was like 8 home runs in 9 games or something. So not having that bat it's pretty grueling for them to lose that kind of bat.
Yeah, and he was hitting nearly 400 too. So it's crazy. Yeah. Will, do you have any thoughts on Wake?
Yeah, I'm with you. I was actually going to bring up that point that you brought up without, the no superstar thing. Like you had Nick Kurtz last year and you had him and Brock Wilken the year before. So you're kind of going from that to Merrick Houston. And he's been one of the most impressive stock risers this season to me personally, because he's been a guy that since he's been at Wake Forest, he's been talked about as a first rounder because of the defensive prowess, but he's quite honestly kind of struggled to hit his own body weight up until this season. And I saw some fall camp reports that said he had really taken some steps at the plate, and he's really shown it. I mean, he's hitting 335 right now. He's got 10 bombs. The run production is there. Like, I think he's done everything he's needed to do in a draft year to actually be the first rounder that it seemed like we were talking about for so long. But to your point, he is not Nick Kurtz or Brock Wilken. Yeah. So you're still missing like a big piece. Even though, Ethan Conrad kind of probably would have filled that role if he was healthy. And that is a huge loss for them. And this is a team that is just so confusing to me. And the Florida State series is a perfect example. Sometimes this team comes out and they look like the best team in the country. And you're like, oh man, like we just woke up the monster. And then they show up and they just lay eggs and you can't really figure out what is going on and why the actual problem is, because this team is extremely talented top to bottom. And they've got guys like Logan Lunsford who have shown flashes of just pure dominance this season. Even still, he's got 74 strikeouts in 45 innings or about. Blake Morningstar has been really, really strong for them in the rotation. So they have the pieces, and like even in a regional format, those are not guys that you want to see with your season on the line when you are playing host and they're a 3 seed. That is not 2 arms that you want to see at that point in the season. Because if they do come out and they win that first game in a regional, and then you got to see Lunsford on day 2 with your season on the line, you might be in some trouble. So I still have a lot of confidence in this team. There's just too much talent there for it to just fizzle out like this.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just like, it's one of those things you run into one of those arms on a hot day. And the next thing you know, you're just punching your ticket home, right? You're not even punching it to the super. So I definitely think it's an interesting team. I want to see what they do the rest of the year, but they could pop back in the top 25. Who knows? So that kind of wraps it up for who's in and who's out. We'll just quickly go through the top 10 here on the top 25. We got Texas, Clemson at 1, Clemson at 2, Arkansas at 3, Florida State at 4, Tennessee at 5, LSU at 6, Oregon State at 7, Vanderbilt at 8, North Carolina at 9, and Georgia at 10. Are there any other teams in that top 10 you guys want to talk about?
I don't know. I mean, Tennessee is an interesting one to me. Yeah. I don't know if you're ready to say like any red flags that you've seen, because it's been a couple of rough weekends for the Vols, and their path doesn't really get any easier. I mean, this was just a bad showing, and I don't like to say like I'm going to panic, because I waited for 2.5 months on A&M before I said, all right, I might just be out on this team, and now look what they're doing. So I'm not one to, especially with what Coach Vitello has done there and the talent they do have there. But they've certainly struggled a little bit since that A&M series, and I think there definitely is some cause for concern. Maybe not concern, but I guess they showed that they are not the dominant team that we saw through 33 games when they were 30-1. But I think this is kind of what happens when you do start off that hot. You are bound to struggle a little bit. you can't win every game in baseball. And when you start off winning your first 30 games, you're probably going to stumble a little bit like a team against Kentucky, who is not the same Kentucky team as last year. But to lose that series at home, I think is just stings a little bit more because that's one that you really should have handled.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good for Kentucky. They're somehow 8-10 in conference play, which kind of surprises me a little bit. Tyler, you got anything on Tennessee? I know you've seen them a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's just like Will said, kind of like hitting the time of the year where there's going to be some hiccups that come along, and they're still 33-7 overall. I think this is a team that we shouldn't be hitting the panic button on, but also looking at what they have coming up, it's like at LSU, you host Auburn. I think they go to Vandy, or they host Vandy and then go to Arkansas for the final weekend of the season. So like, it's not an easy schedule upcoming for the rest of the year.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Last thing I want to get into, pick one team that just missed the top 25 that you think should be in there. Tyler, I know you talked about NC State, so I assume that's going to be your pick, but I'll turn it over to you first on this one.
Yeah, it was NC State. And I think for them, like coming off that Virginia series where they took a kind of a gut punch in that Sunday game where they were down 8-2 and then came back and won that game. And I think since then they won a ranked Louisville series at home. And then they also swept Cal this weekend. And Cal can be a pretty tricky team. Like they can be pretty competitive one series and the next week kind of just disappears. But I think they handled Cal very well, and they've got some pieces coming up in the pitching staff, especially like Anderson Nance has been really, really good. Fired 5 perfect innings against Cal the other day and really solidified them in that win. So I think they found a bit of confidence, and like I said, coming off that Virginia walk-off, for a team that young and inexperienced, like Coach Avon has talked about it, it's not the kind of team last year where they had Garrett Pennington, Alec Makarevich as the big leaders. This year, I think the oldest guy might be Justin DeCrisio, or there's another guy in there that his name's slipping my mind, like Braden Frosman. So it's a really young, inexperienced team that is now kind of finding their footing, and I think that's been key for them. And usually the Avon teams get hot at the right time. They get hot at the end of the season. Like we mentioned 2021, when they went to the College World Series, they went from being like 1-9 in the ACC to probably one of the biggest nightmares for an opponent within the span of like 2 weeks. So do I think that happens this year? Maybe not, but it's definitely nice to see the team kind of begin to find its footing and, continue to do well in ACC play. I think this is a team that it is above that little middling pack that we've mentioned in the ACC. And I think they could definitely have a chance to at least get like a 5 seed potentially in the ACC.
Yeah, I could see that. I like that. Will, who do you got?
Mine is Dallas Baptist. That's a team I've been really high on all season. They are winners of 7 straight at the moment. I think we punished them a little bit too much after that series loss against Western Kentucky, who has shown to be a really solid mid-major.
Yeah.
They're coming off of a week where they beat TCU in extra innings, swept Sam Houston, swept Jacksonville State. So they're playing back to kind of what we expected out of them, and they've swept the season series over Oklahoma in midweeks. This offense just mashes. I mean, the nickname for this team is Dallas Bombers, and every single year this team does what they do. Grant Jay's got 16 home runs on the season. They don't have a single qualified hitter hitting under 250 at the moment. Micah Bucknam has been fantastic for them in the rotation. And they don't have that Ryan Johnson type arm this year that can come out and win against quite literally anybody in the country.
Yeah.
But this is a pitching staff that's still really good. James Ellwanger has been really solid for them. Ryan Borberg has been really good for them. So they've got just a stash of really quality arms, especially in their rotation. And this offense is just going to produce at such a high level. Their team, I think, is perpetually in the top 25 until they start like really, really losing. And a lot of their losses this season are really quality losses. They do have that loss against TCU. They've got that loss against LSU on a neutral site. So they've played really good competition throughout the season. I believe they're in the top 25 for RPI as well, or if not, they're knocking on the door of it. But I'm a huge fan of DBU this year. I think there's actually going to be a chance we see them as a host seed and come June. So I'm looking forward to watching them finish out the season. If they do end up winning conference, I do believe they'll be a host.
I love it. I love those picks. I'll get into final thoughts here. My first final thought is that I'm mad at TCU after I did an awesome clip about how incredible they are. They go and lose the series at UCF. So thanks, Horned Frogs. Really appreciate that. Tyler, any final thoughts on your end?
No, I think I've covered mine pretty well. Also mad at TCU. Come on, guys. Why?
We're going to clip this and just going to have an angry at TCU clip just go out. What about you, Will? Any final thoughts?
No, that's all I got. Aggies are back. Watch out for that team.
Love it. We got a bunch of new content coming your way. We got a couple interviews that we're going to be conducting with, I believe we got Oregon's Mason Neville coming on. We got Alabama's Riley Quick. So we'll be having more draft prospect interviews coming your way. Will had that awesome article that we talked about earlier on Texas A&M and them being back. Tyler had a MLB draft, not spotlight, but in-depth deep dive on Jamie Arnold since he's seen him like 1,000 times over his career now. So that was a really, really good piece, scouting piece that you should go check out. We'll have more live looks, a ton of content coming your way. So until next time, we'll see you.